Welcome to the Laverne Church of the Brethren's weekly audio message. Here at the Laverne Church of the Brethren, we create a Christian community called by Christ to be inclusive, caring, and peace-minded. We affirm that people of any race, ethnic identity, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, age, economic status, faith tradition, or life situation are welcome in our congregation. We believe in compassionate service, stewardship of creation, respect for diversity, and nonviolent reconciliation for differences among all people, nations, and faith traditions. We claim no creed but the New Testament as exemplified by the life of Christ. We strive to follow the way of Jesus. And through these efforts, we seek to grow ever closer to the mind and heart of God. And now let us ground ourselves as we enter into today's message. Second scripture today comes from the book of Matthew, chapter 28, verses 16 through 20. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but they doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always to the end of the age."
Good morning. I'm honored to be preaching this morning on Pineapple Express Sunday. I am getting the full California experience. I had my first experience of an earthquake last month, and this is now my second Pineapple Express in a week. So I wanted to thank all of you for braving the elements to be here this morning. And I also thank those of you who are joining us on Zoom, who still have power. We're grateful for everyone who's participating this morning. I chose a couple texts because they seem to be texts that people snatched doubt out of the jaws of faith. We had an example of this last weekend. The Detroit Lions were up 24-7 in the first half. And there had to be many fans of the Detroit Lions who had faith that their team was going to the Super Bowl. But some doubted. And they were right. Because these are the Lions. They haven't won a championship since 1957. When I'm in Arizona, part of these several hats I wear is as a wedding officiant. I list my services online. And for a lot of couples, they're just glad to have someone to sign their documents at the end and put together a ceremony that doesn't start out something like marriage. Is a reason we have gathered today. Sign the But some of them like to have premarital counseling. It's rare, but and then some of them, in the midst of planning and dealing with in-laws, they take counseling advice. There was a couple that came to me. Both of them had troubled backgrounds, troubled families, troubled lives. And the groom-to-be, the boyfriend, had done everything over their courtship to prove that he was the right person for the bride-to-be. She wanted to have faith that this was someone she could trust. But her experiences before that had taught her not to trust anyone. Family members, friends. And there was this person who was just trying and trying and trying. And she told me the only way that I could get to yes is to pray to God to teach me how to trust this good man who's ready to commit his life to me. They wanted to have the reading Footsteps read at their wedding, another rarity, and they even put up with my joke about footsteps, which is on the next slide. They did not think that was funny, by the way. So I kind of had to backpedal out of that one. Now, in the two texts that I chose, both of them contain the word doubt, and they seem to be people that are snatching doubt from the jaws of faith. One is, we didn't read a whole lot, and go ahead and go to the next slide, but it's the story of Jesus leaving the boat and walking on water, and Peter tries to follow him, and he makes it part of the way, but then he sinks, and Jesus seems to tell him, he does tell him, well, why did you doubt? And I don't know about you, but I was thinking to myself, Jesus, duh. Have you seen the wind? Have you seen the waves? You know, Jesus, there's no YMCA in Galilee. I don't know how to swim. So then it was helpful for me to do a word study on the word doubt, the way it's used in the New Testament. And there are other ways that it can be translated. For example, the Greek word for doubt, this Greek word for doubt is used 2 times in the New Testament, both in Matthew. I gave you both the references. Jesus uses it to Peter in Matthew 14:31 when Peter flounders in his attempt to walk on water. This frequently has been read as a rebuke, but rightly understood in its context, it's more like hesitation or uncertainty. It wasn't that Peter had this stubborn unbelief in Jesus. It's just that he got scared and hesitant. Uncertainty. And if you think of it in that way, Jesus said, well, why did you get uncertain? And in a way, it's Jesus saying, you know, Peter, you almost made it. It's like a toddler taking his first steps or her first steps. And you know how they carefully take their hands off what they're leaning against, and they stagger, and they come toward you, and they almost made it. Perhaps that's what Jesus was trying to tell to Peter. Peter, you almost made it, but you hesitated, and you wavered. And really, Jesus had to appreciate that at least Peter got out of the boat. Where were the rest of the disciples? They were clinging for dear life. But Peter tried. He tried to take some steps. And the resurrection scene, too, I was thinking, if there's any time in the Bible, in the New Testament, that people should have faith in Jesus, it would be during one of the resurrection appearances. How could they not believe? There he is in front of them. But if they were uncertain, not sure of what they're seeing, you know, they've been through a lot. This guy that they had followed and hung out with and honored and loved, was crucified. They saw that. He was buried. They saw that. And then to see him reappear, it's a lot to take in 3 days. They were uncertain. They hesitated. That seems to be a charitable way to look at the situation, and perhaps a more accurate one to say, oh, they doubted. They doubted what they were saying. So how does the New Testament use the word faith? And go ahead and go to the next slide. The Greek word for faith is rarely used in the New Testament to talk about believing things that are unbelievable. You know, you don't line up 5 fundamentals and say, unless you believe these unbelievable things, you're not in. No, that's not what faith is about. Historically and linguistically, faith has nothing theoretical about it at all. It's all about trust and trustworthiness, loyalty, confidence, honesty. In politics or a treaty, it's an exchange of assurances. It's political protection or safety granted in exchange for submission. In economics, it's referred to good credit, a guarantee, a pledge, or a security deposit. That's very different than saying, well, my faith demands that I believe all these things. No. The faith demands that you follow Jesus, that you trust in Jesus, that you trust God, that you keep on going when it seems like trust doesn't make sense to you. I have a relative. This relative was an idea man and kind of a promoter, too. You maybe have relatives like this. They come up with ideas. And when they come up with an idea, it is the best idea in the history of humankind. And they pursue it with a zealotry that is hard to match. Well, my relative is one of those people. And he was always coming up with ideas in his younger days of how to help his family make ends meet. And one of his ideas was selling soap products, and the soap, it was kind of one of those pyramid scheme things. You start out here, and then you get 10 people to sell for you, and then they get 10 people, and all these people are sending kickbacks up the pyramid. And so if you build enough of a pyramid and you're at the top, I mean, you are making bank. Well, that didn't work out so well. So he had another idea. He had a hobby farm, and he thought, I've heard that raising sheep and shearing them and selling the wool, that is the way to get ahead these days. And he pursued this with a zealotry that you could not imagine, and he had all these sheep. One of the sheep was a secret agent. Because that sheep could find any hole that existed in a fence, or would create the hole. And it wasn't like the story that Jesus told about the shepherd who had 100 sheep and one went missing and left the 99 to go. No. That was not shepherding with fences. When you're shepherding with fences, if one sheep goes missing, all 100 sheep go missing. And that happened a number of times, and the money that he got for the wool, it just didn't work out. Later in his life, he was working as a parole officer. And while he was working as a parole officer, he saw nonviolent juvenile defenders who would get imprisoned with the hardened juvenile violent criminals. And it wasn't like the TV show Scared Straight. These nonviolent offenders would go to the hardened offenders and be in prison, and they didn't come out scared straight. They came out hardened and embittered and repeated worse offenses than what they were in for before. And my relative thought, there's something wrong with this system. And he started talking about, there's something wrong. Something should be done differently about this. And well, that's just the way things are. You just have to accept it. I mean, there's no other way we can do this. I know of dozens of Church of the Brethren and Mennonite families that would love to take in a nonviolent offender in foster care and have them in their family for a while and love them, and maybe while they're in their family, the family that the offender came from would be getting counseled on how they could help the one who was offending to be a better person. They'd be in family therapy while this was going on. And did I tell you my relative was a promoter? He started talking about this and talking about this and talking about it. You know what happened? The government listened. And he set up an organization called Church of the Brethren Youth Services that involved families started out with Church of the Brethren and Mennonite families and expanded to others. They would be trained and screened and all that because the state was involved. The state was over watching them, and they had remarkable success. Now, my relative didn't get rich from this idea, but I wonder what would have happened if he had stopped dreaming. If he had thought, my ideas never work out. I should just stop having ideas. God isn't going to help me bring these ideas to pass. But he kept going. And that organization, 45 years later, is continuing. When a friend of mine from the Pacific Southwest Mennonite Conference was working with some churches, the Brethren, in this district, he noted that the churches seemed to be small in size, but they had an outsized positive influence on the communities around them. The churches tended to be small in size, but they had an outsized positive impact on the communities around them. You give me the next slide. Can we still be that kind of church? A church with outsized positive influence in the community around us? I wouldn't doubt it.
We're so glad that you listened to the message today. If you're looking for an open and affirming, peace-loving, and justice-seeking congregation, consider visiting us for in-person worship on Sundays at 9:30 a.m. We'd love to meet you.